Welcome in Monday edition of OutKick the show, Washington, D.C. special edition, as you can tell. Different background, different setup than normal. I'll be back home for OutKick the show next week, but I wanted to do a reaction. I may do another reaction or so if there's major news that we need to react to, but it was a crazy weekend. And there was a lot that I thought it was important to weigh in on. I'm up in Washington, D.C. because my oldest son is doing an internship on Capitol Hill with a Senate office. And I wanted to give him an opportunity to be in D.C. So that is why I am up here for this week. Going to do a lot of cool things, including be in the Oval Office with President Trump later this week. We're going to be out at the Pentagon. We're going to be running around State Department, you name it. We'll be interacting with Clay and Buck with a lot of different events going on. I am wearing my XXXY shirt. We just had Riley Gaines on the Clay and Buck show, and that's where I want to start. We got a lot to dive into. Riley versus Simone, my $250,000 offer for anyone out there that wants to identify as a woman and win a women's championship. I'll explain. College settlement came down, $20.5 million, where I think we're headed there. NBA rating set basically an all-time low outside of the COVID years. LA riot response, what we saw yesterday, Warner Brothers splitting up, big media news, all that and more. But I want to start with what happened with Simone Biles calling out Riley Gaines out of nowhere. Absolutely indefensible, in my opinion, for Simone Biles to have behaved the way she did. And let me just give you a little bit of background. I was out to dinner Friday with my mother-in-law, brother-in-law, 3 kids, wife. And so I wasn't really completely plugged in the news universe, right? Trying to just have dinner. Olive Garden, lovely. That's where my mother-in-law wanted to go. And so we're sitting at the table, and I look down, and Riley has texted me a link to what Simone Biles sent to her. And I'll be honest with you, I thought it had to be fake. I thought to myself, there is no way this is actually U.S. Olympic gymnast Simone Biles, who has attacked Riley Gaines out of nowhere for simply saying that what happened in Minnesota was unacceptable, that there shouldn't have been a boy on a women's softball team who was the main pitcher, also hit a couple of doubles, and helped to ensure that that main softball, Minnesota softball team won a championship. And I mentioned Maine because talking with Riley, just in the last week, 5 different states, California, couple of track and field state championships won by a boy pretending to be a girl. Same thing happened in Oregon. Same thing just happened in Minnesota. It's also happened in Maine, and it also happened additionally, Oregon. So we got Oregon, Maine, California, Washington, all these different states, and Minnesota. All these different states, suddenly, you have boys winning girls' championships or girls' placement on medal stands. It's crazy. And so Riley Gaines called out the situation in Minnesota, and then suddenly Simone Biles called her out. And also I wrote down, that she body shamed Riley Gaines for some reason, saying that she was this bully someone your own size. Bully someone your own size, first of all, implies that Riley Gaines is a different size and that there is a difference in gender. But also, Riley put up a video pointing out that she's not actually that tall. That was actually my first thought when I saw bully someone your own size. I've known Riley for a while now, and that isn't anything wrong with being a woman who's 6 foot or 6'4" or whatever a supremely tall woman would be considered to be. That's not Riley. She measured herself. Basically, she's 5'5" or 5'6". Totally normal sized woman. And I still don't understand what Simone Biles is thinking, but I thought that J.K. Rowling said it really well when she talked about the idea of pulling up the ladder as soon as your career is over. if men had decided to compete in women's gymnastics, Simone Biles wouldn't have won any gold medals at all. She would never have become an iconic gymnast because men are better at all of the gymnastics events that women do. And I actually was surprised by that because I had the expectation that women's gymnasts would actually be better at all the women's gymnastic events than the men. My wife was a high-level gymnast. She was one of the top gymnasts in high school in the state of Michigan. I think she came in 5th in the all-round when she was a high schooler. And I remember we were watching the women's gymnastics one year, and my wife said, "Oh, no, we were watching the floor routine and some of the events that women do." She said, "No, men would be better at all of these events. They're bigger, stronger, and faster. They could do better floor routines than women. They could do better vaults than women. They could do better uneven bars than women. They could do better on the balance beam than women. Men would be able to do, if they did the same competitions, all of them better than women are able to do them." I didn't really realize that. But I do think it's important here because what Simone Biles argued in favor of is the eradication of women's athletes. And she's similar to Megan Rapinoe in that, as Megan Rapinoe argued, as soon as their careers are over, men would be way better at soccer than everybody on the U.S. women's soccer team. In fact, a team of 15-year-old boys in Dallas crushed the U.S. women's soccer team. That's just 15-year-old boys in Dallas. A team of 15-year-old boys that were the best in the nation would destroy the U.S. women's soccer team, which are the best women's soccer players in the world. A top high school state champion team of boys would likely dominate and destroy the U.S. women's soccer team, the best women's soccer players in the world. I'm not trying to demean female athletes. I'm just pointing out that they wouldn't exist if we had some form of unisex or we didn't separate men's and women's sports. And that's why when USA Today came out and said, "Oh, Simone Biles is being so brave," and they said, "We don't even really know what the impact would be of men competing as women because there haven't been enough studies." Excuse me? Let me just ask you this. How come there's no women who identify as men that are becoming men's champions? It's because gender is real. And male athletes are bigger, stronger, and faster in all sports than women. In fact, it's probably the case that if you did away with women's Olympic sports and just had unisex, there would not be a single Olympian that was female. Maybe in some of the shooting, maybe in some of the equestrian, women would have a chance to compete, but in nothing where true physical size and strength is involved would women be able to compete at all in either the Summer or Winter Olympics. This is, make no mistakes about it, the actual eradication of female athletes. And when people like Megan Rapinoe and Simone Biles wait until their career is over to decide that they don't want or don't care if men compete in women's sports, it's particularly pernicious because they're basically taking the ladder and lifting it up to them, and they don't care about any of the other younger girls that would aspire to be like them. Now, positive here. Simone Biles got absolutely obliterated on social media for this take, such that Riley said on the program with us that she actually felt a little bit bad for Simone Biles over how the response was. Now, I didn't stop at Simone Biles. Some of you may have seen over the weekend, Simone Biles has a husband who plays in the NFL. And I raised a question for him. Hey, what do you think about this situation? Do you actually agree with what your wife is saying? And then I followed up for Simone Biles, and I want to make sure I get his name right too. Her husband plays in the NFL, Jonathan Owens. He plays for the Chicago Bears. Does she think that it would be fair for Jonathan Owens to define himself, to identify as a woman and play on the women's flag football team in 2028 at the Olympics because they're going to have flag football? Because that's basically what Simone Biles is arguing for, that if a man decides he wants to identify as a woman, you have to accept it as true, and you have to allow him to win a women's championship. So does she think that her husband should be able to play on the women's flag football team? She's either a moron, which is possibly true, or she's getting paid a ton of money by some group that is trying to advocate unsuccessfully for men and women's sports. Either way, this is an indefensible argument. And I stand up in favor of Riley Gaines against USA Today's absurdity, and I'm willing to put my money where my mouth is. I tweeted this out, so I want to be clear about it for everybody out there. I will pay $250,000 of my cash if a man can identify as a woman and make it on a WNBA team, on an LPGA tour, and win a women's championship, on the Women's Tennis Association and win in the French Open, Wimbledon, the U.S. Open, any of these locations. In women's gymnastics, if a man can identify as a woman and win a championship, I will pay $250,000 because I believe in penis power. I believe that the best men are that the best women are actually men. I believe in the patriarchy, yay, boy power. I want for men to dominate women's athletics and win all the women championships. If you are a kid, if you are a high school boy, I will pay you, who decides to identify as a girl, $10,000 for every state championship that you win as a boy competing as a girl. Now, all of this is patently absurd, but I'm putting my money where my mouth is. I think we need to take this to the next level. I just said it happened in Minnesota, Maine, California, Washington, Oregon, just in the last week. Boys are overwhelmingly winning in blue states girls' championships. Let's take it to the next level, men and boys. Let's establish penis power once and for all. I'll also pay an additional $100,000, and I'll also cover any legal fees that you may have as a result if you win a women's championship. And on the medal stand, you pull out your penis and twirl it around like a helicopter. Extra $100K for you. So we are talking about potentially being able to make $350,000 if you are a man who can win a women's championship. I think it's going to take this level of absurdity. Male women's championship, I want you to swing your penis around like a helicopter. It's going to take something that is so outrageous, that is so outlandish, that people can't look away for everyone to say, this can't happen anymore. We have to end men and women's sports. So I am upping the ante. I'm putting my money where my mouth is. I want for you, penis power, men to go out and dominate women's sports, because the best possible women, everybody knows this, are men. And look, this is hyperbole. This is ridiculous. I understand. No pun intended, ridiculous. But it may be necessary to up the ante because Democrats keep doubling down on crazy, tripling down on crazy, quadrupling down on crazy. So let's take them at their word. Men can identify as women and become women's champions. I am putting my money where my mouth is on this issue. $250,000, an additional $100,000 if you twirl your penis like a helicopter after winning a track and field championship. Certainly in the Olympics, we already know that a dude seems to have won a gold medal by beating the crap out of a woman. Every high school boy in the state of Texas, for example, that wins a track championship this year is faster than the fastest woman that has ever run in the history of the female species. So a lot of guys out there that could win women's championships. I'm putting you on notice and daring you and encouraging you to do so. Now, I want to mention this because I think it's significant. Nobody else is going to mention it. I believe the number, I don't have my trusty researcher, Adam, because I'm in D.C. and this is not live. I want to make sure that I get the number right. I believe the number was 8.9 million viewers for Game 1 of the NBA Finals. I don't think we have Game 2 viewership yet. Last night, tied up at 1-1. Really boring game. I had it on in the background. The first game of the NBA Finals did, in fact, have 8.91 million viewers. That was the lowest number of viewers of the NBA Finals for a normally scheduled season, because 2020 does not count, 2021 does not count. Those were both very, very low, but they had an arbitrary season because they were competing against the NBA and everything else, other than the NFL, because they played in the fall and all the chaos that unspooled surrounding that. Other than that, we have never seen fewer people watch the NBA in the history of the NBA Finals, going all the way back to Bird versus Magic, when the NBA Finals used to air on tape delay. This is the lowest, least watched NBA Finals in 2 generations. Basically, in my entire life, and I'm an old guy, other than COVID, never has the NBA had a lower viewership. Why is that happening? Because the NBA brand has been lit on fire since they went far left-wing with politics. This is the explanation. There are other things that are out there. The load management sucks, but that's not why less people are watching the NBA Finals, because nobody is sitting out in the playoffs. All the top players are playing. Yes, there are way too many three-pointers. Basically, every possession is the same thing. Pick and roll, top of the key. And you either go all the way to the rim and finish at the basket, or you kick it to somebody else and they end up taking a three. That's essentially every possession now in the NBA. The three-point shot is so valued, and there's so many great shooters that there isn't an incentive for anything other than a layup, dunk, or a three-pointer. That's basically how virtually every possession in the NBA ends. So do those things factor in? Yes, they do. But ultimately, I think this is, when you look at multiple years, about brand destruction. When they put Black Lives Matter on the basketball court in 2020, when they replaced player names with political slogans, a lot of people have left. LeBron, Adam Silver, Greg Popovich, Steve Kerr, all of you lecturing us while you were bending the knee to China about how awful America was, all of you lecturing us about the need to go vote for Kamala or Hillary or Joe Biden. You have needlessly politicized the NBA. Jordan was right when he said Republicans buy sneakers too, and this is the natural result. There's nobody watching. Now, does small market impact things somewhat? Yeah, sure. Oklahoma City, very fabulous team. One of the best NBA teams we've seen in recent history. And look, the Indiana Pacers with Tyrese Halliburton has been a really entertaining team to watch, particularly with their huge comebacks like what we saw in Game 1. But here is the reality. The brand is toxic. I've been saying it for years. Nobody will acknowledge it. They pretend it's not true. It is. There are tens of millions of basketball fans out there who love the NBA, absolutely love the NBA, and also love Donald Trump. I used to be one of them. I am a big Trump supporter who loved watching the NBA in the 90s and the 2000s all the way up through Kobe's era, and even didn't have any issues with LeBron until he decided to go super political in the woke sports era. And that's when they lit their brand on fire, and they have not recovered from it. When they told us that they bent the knee to China, when LeBron said there are issues with the First Amendment, when Popovich and Kerr lectured us about how awful Trump was, and decided to use their platforms at their press conferences to endorse left-wing politics when they legitimately put Black Lives Matter on the court, and when they wrote political slogans on the back of jerseys, they turned off tens of millions of fans. And a lot of those fans, frankly, have not come back. And I don't think it's a coincidence The data doesn't reflect that it is. The Jordan era was correct that Republicans buy sneakers too, and the NBA should, I believe, apologize. I think Adam Silver, he should come on the show, should come on with me and say, you know what, we got way too political. That was not a smart decision. There's a time and place for politics. It turns out that for most sports fans, that's not on the court and that's not on the jersey, and we were wrong. And we want to bring back all the NBA fans that we may have lost because the game of basketball is a great one. It unites cultures and it bridges differences. I agree with all that. And if they were willing to say that, I think it would go a long way towards repairing the relationship that they lit on fire with many of their fans. And for people out there who say, well, you're wrong, Clay. Talk about baseball or hockey or whatever else. The game of basketball is actually quite strong. In fact, we are seeing record ratings in college basketball for men and for women. Heck, the WNBA is seeing record ratings because of Caitlin Clark. Now, they may well be lighting their entire brand on fire, too, over decisions like not credentialing OutKick, right? But in general, the game of basketball has never been higher rated everywhere but the NBA, which has the lowest ratings ever. Truly, fewer people have never watched in most of your lives than watched Game 1 of the NBA Finals taking place in a normal time outside of the COVID era. We'll see how Game 2 does. Again, I'm taping this on Monday afternoon. We have not yet seen how that is going so far. So, again, WNBA crushing because of Caitlin Clark. NBA absolutely collapsing. College basketball rolling. Women's college basketball doing quite well. Again, that's really sort of the Caitlin Clark effect, but all of that underway. Okay, a couple of other things that I wanted to hit here on the Monday edition. We got a sign-off from Judge Claudia Wilkin on the college settlement allowing $20.5 million to be spent on behalf of all of the colleges and universities that want to do so. There now will be an NIL clearinghouse for all deals above $600 to see whether or not they comply with existing market rates and are basically allowed, or if they are attempting to circumvent what is effectively a $20.5 million salary cap. Now, this is revolutionary because the schools are directly paying the players now out of the revenue that they are producing. Here is what I would say I see as the challenge. Ultimately, this is likely, in my opinion, to lead to even more litigation, beginning with Title IX, because a lot of people out there are going to say women have to get $10.25 million of this $20.5 million, because they are going to argue that the money here, compensation for top athletes, is actually also required to be split evenly with female athletes, just like scholarships are. I don't believe that to be true, but the lawsuit is going to happen. And if it is a Title IX violation, this is going to mean that these settlement dollars don't make sense because from a college university perspective, they're looking at this and saying almost all this money is going to go to football players and men's basketball players. And the reason why is because that is what produces overwhelmingly revenue that allows the entire athletic departments to exist. Right now, most of the money produced by, let's say, Alabama football or Ohio State football actually trickles down to many different athletic programs that otherwise would not exist in a purely market-based economy. The lawsuits that are going to come are going to be massive. They are going to take years to work themselves out, and the antitrust element associated with this is still going to potentially be in play because there is no antitrust exemption. Now, Congress is working to try to create an antitrust exemption, but we do not know whether that is going to be possible or not going forward from a legal perspective, and whether they're going to be able to pass that bill. If they don't, then I would expect that we are going to continue to see a massive amount of lawsuits surrounding all of this. So I'll probably have way more to say about the college settlements, certainly by next week as all of this continues to work itself out. Like many of you last night, I was watching the LA riots and the response from police. I may have a controversial take here, But I think police who are having rocks thrown at them, who are having Molotov cocktails thrown at them, as you saw specifically the LA police underneath the overpass, they should be able to fire their guns because they should be able to use deadly force when they are potentially in danger themselves. This doesn't feel to me like a difficult call. I salute Trump. I think Trump has learned, President Trump, from the response that we saw to BLM, that he needs to be aggressive to stop these protests from spreading all over the country, just like those 5 years ago did. Significantly, through the first half of this year, we are potentially trending towards an all-time low of the murder rate, really, which would be an incredible accomplishment, and I think goes a long way towards endorsing the law community that Trump has allowed to do their job, the police officers, the prosecutors, that we are fighting back against violent crime, finally, after allowing 50-year high surges from one year to another, like we saw in 2020, 2021 era. 2025, potentially the new all-time low, but that's only if we let police do their job. And overwhelmingly, people want violent illegals removed from this country. That's what ICE is trying to do under Tom Homan. That's what President Trump is trying to make happen. I think we need more of that, not less. I give credit to President Trump for his response so far to the LA riots. And again, I think it's a lesson that he learned from what happened with the BLM riots, which were allowed to occur in 2020 during the summer. Now, I think we should have the same prosecution for all violent people out there, whether they are engaging in Republican, Democrat, or independent-led protest. You have a right to peaceful protest. You do not have a right to violently protest. If you violently protest, you should be prosecuted evenly, whether you're Republican, Democrat, or independent. What we saw on January 6th, for instance, in Washington, D.C., was everybody could riot and engage in violent acts as much as they wanted if they were engaging in BLM protests. They did not treat protesters the same. I want Democrat, Republican, independent, no politics. If you engage in violent acts, you have the right to peacefully protest. As soon as you engage in violence or start blocking roads, there should be significant consequences for you going forward. That, to me, is the principle that everyone should stand on. Finally, the Warner Brothers split has occurred. Let me look at the stock market as I am talking to all of you and get the absolute latest there from the situation. We are back above 6,000, as I told you, in the stock market. And Warner Brothers stock, I presume, is probably skyrocketing. But what really this is the story of is the collapse of the cable and satellite bundle. Warner Brothers Discovery, I'm wrong. It's down 3% today. I thought the company had been up substantially today, and I'm right. It was up over $11, and it has since come back over $1. So this is a big move to have all of this come back. But I think what it represents is something that also came out Friday after I finished the Friday OutKick show. ESPN and the sports universe in general, from a cable perspective, not the broadcast, traditional ABC, NBC, CBS, and Fox. That's still somewhat of a rational world. But ESPN is drastically cutting costs. They kicked Major League Baseball to the curb. I don't think they're going to be able to keep the UFC. I don't think they're going to be able to keep F1. But all of a sudden, ESPN can't even afford to keep their best asset, which is the college football playoff. They are having to sell some of it back to TNT because I think the reason is they drastically overpaid for 1/3 of the NBA. There's starting to be a panic set in as they realize that the NBA was wildly overvalued. I think it was the worst sports rights deal we've ever seen. As a result, ESPN couldn't afford Major League Baseball. They can't afford to keep all of their college football package. In fact, they're auctioning off a lot of it, the playoff games, which are the most valuable component to that. And I think you're going to continue to see a lot of cost cutting, particularly as ESPN realizes that this flagship offering they're trying to put out into the marketplace is not going to be profoundly well received. All right. By the way, one last bit. I want to call out USA Today Sports in particular again for trying to argue we don't know what the difference is between men and women. I talked about this off the top, but I do think this is one reason why OutKick continues to skyrocket in popularity. In fact, there is a big story coming out soon on me. I don't know if it's going to be positive or negative, probably negative, but it's going to be written by the Washington Post. I'm thinking about it because I'm in Washington right now, and it's going to be a story about the incredible growth of OutKick and the incredible influence that OutKick has. And that's what stood out to me when I saw Riley Gaines attacked, is that overwhelmingly sports fans agree with us and are rejecting the USA Today and other left-wing sports universes that would argue that men should be able to compete against women. You can argue, as I saw Eric Swalwell do to Piers Morgan, that this isn't a major issue. The problem for Democrats and people, really it's not even Democrats because most Democrats agree with us, 67% according to the New York Times. The problem that they run into here is when you lie and when you are willing to lie to me and say there is no difference between men and women, and therefore it's fine to have men and women's sports intermingled and men winning women's championships, that is a lie that is of such a substantial nature that I cannot trust you on any other issue. Because if you will lie about that, you will lie about everything. I think that is what you are seeing take place. All right. DBAP unless you need to. SBAP, I love all of you. Props to Riley Gaines for being brave, strong, courageous, outspoken, correct in this marketplace in general. I'm proud to have her with us at OutKick. Also, props to OutKick covering the Minnesota State Championship, having Amber Harding up there covering that and doing a really good job. I think the video she posted of the Minnesota team with a boy celebrating on the field has racked up millions of views. My challenge, $250,000 challenge for any man who can make a women's sports pro league and team and win a championship. That is going to go mega viral. I think it had like 5 million views alone, just the tweet. I'm sure this is going to be clipped and go everywhere on TikTok. I love all of you. DBAP unless you need to SBAP. I'm Clay Travis, proud of OutKick and all of our growth. I'll be back with you in theory next week. I'm up in D.C. with my 17-year-old, be running all over the place. Looking forward to it. If craziness happens, I might jump in here again with you, but I'm here in the iHeart radio studios, as you can tell, in D.C. I'll talk to you guys again soon. But again, thanks for all the support of OutKick. I'll see you soon.